Hi, in today's interview, I speak with Simanta Mohanty, an HR leader with over 3 decades of experience across leading organizations in India. He has worked across the government, non-profit, and for-profit sectors, and at some of the leading companies like IBM, Wipro, Dr. Reddy's Laboratories, and some leading non-profits like CARE that you may also have heard of. In this interview, we discuss a whole gamut of things from the recent Coldplay incident that you all are aware of and what it implies for governance and larger lessons you can take away from it, to Gen Zs and what actually inspires us about Gen Zs and Gen Alpha in today's workplaces rather than what we don't like about them. And the conversation also touches upon various observations that Simant has from how HR professionals are educated and trained for today's world to how HR might be losing touch with the people side of things and many other issues as well. I hope you'll enjoy this conversation. Hi, Simant. Welcome to my fledgling podcast. I'm honored to have you here as a guest.
Thank you, Raghav. It's a real pleasure, and it's a real. And someday later, people will say it's a real honor to be on your podcast. I'm sure this will grow in popularity. But for me, it's an honor even right now to have been considered for this by you. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. That's very kind of you. Do you mind if we dive straight into the difficult questions?
Not at all. Please fire away. I'm
Simant,
waiting for
one
them.
of one of the most, like, I would say, infamous scenarios that we have all heard recently is this incident where at a Coldplay concert, a relationship between a CEO and a chief people officer was exposed. I think you are also well aware of it. It was everywhere. You couldn't miss it. Now that some time has passed, how do you, with your wealth of experience across government, private, non-profit sectors in the people space, how do you reflect on that incident?
Yeah, so what they say about being in the right place at the right time for opportunities, right? This was one case of being at the wrong place at the wrong time, I think, for both the individuals. I won't comment on them. I think we are aware of the fact that the world has seen that, and they have been dealt with by their organization and by the media in their own way. Um, yeah, but there used to be a beautiful quotation that I heard that I had from Swami Ranganathananda, who used to head the Ramakrishna mission
Mm-hmm.
quite some time back. So he wrote a beautiful line in my diary. It said, "It is wise to be in the forefront of opportunity in matters of enterprise, as to be in the rear of opportunity in matters of indulgence."
Right.
That line has stayed with me for the longest time. On an individual, from an individual point of view, I think it holds very good. um, the world is full of temptations, especially for CEOs and CHROs and people in power in many organizations. And I have also seen that it is full of temptations for people even lower down the rung. But, temptations gravitate towards people who are higher up, it seems. It's how you deal with them that gives you the character to, to lead the organization, to deal with people in the organization. So here was a case of maybe two people who didn't deal with it, didn't deal with temptation too well. But leaving the personalities aside, what was unfortunate about that episode is that it just showed what is really wrong with human resources as a function in an organization.
Hmm.
Okay. It showed that if you are that close and the proximity is that nearby to the CEO and the chief executive, then the governance elements of human resources suffer.
Right.
Okay. Uh, if I have, understood HR properly as a practitioner, as well as somebody who lives in an organization and works in an organization, it is supposed to have that high neutral ground
Hmm.
from which it can do justice with employees. If I hope you don't mind me using the word justice,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it happens. They do justice with employees, they nurture the talent, they are supposed to dispense wisdom, they're supposed to dispense company and organization policies that make sense to people.
Hmm.
Now that happens when HR is perceived as being neutral and is supposed to have a certain amount of distance from the power, which is as per governance norms. When that gets violated, when the distance gets violated, you question why, how HR can do the real work that it is supposed to do. And that episode brought to the fore that, this was what was wrong with human resources there.
Right.
And mind you, what I find funny about that incident was the CEO was not caught with the chief finance officer or the chief marketing officer, right? But it was with the chief human resources officer. And that for me also represented what could really be broken about HR in many organizations across the world.
Hmm.
It happened in the US. We have seen that happening in India also. When the HR becomes too cozy to the top, it doesn't portend well for the organization. It doesn't portend well for people in the organization. That's what the Coldplay scenario means to me. And
Okay.
now that word has entered into the lexicon of management discourse. I believe it's called cold played or something like that now. But it has stopped being funny quite some time back.
Yeah.
It's really unfortunate that it was caught that way. And yeah, I hope the organization moves on and finds the best measures possible to deal with this scandal, because astronomer as the organization should not suffer because of this one indiscretion by its
Yeah.
leaders. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my feeling.
Yeah. I agree to quite a great extent with what you say. And especially this point about governance. That is such a key thing in when you run any big business, right? And nowadays what we are seeing, especially if you are and you are a regular on LinkedIn, is all of these stories where HR is essentially being portrayed or perhaps even acting as a defender of the hierarchy of the or the leadership of the company rather than a neutral voice, like you said, in the organization. So have you seen this trend of increasingly HR siding, or rather being put into situations where they aren't able to be neutral like they should be?
Now, look, uh, the human resources function is not made of divinities who have descended from the heavens. They're made of human beings also. And, like human beings in the organization, they're employees also. And like any employee, they're susceptible to the insecurities and to the politics and the power plays that happen in the organization. What should distinguish human resources is the leadership of HR and their ability to draw boundaries within the organization. Now that's easier said than done. It can cost very heavy to if you draw that boundary and if you speak truth to power. It can cost the HR, the individual, the person in an HR role fairly heavy to be able to do that. So therefore, it becomes one of the functions. It becomes a player in the game of, corporate politics, corporate power that happens. And a lot of that is reflected, as you say, in the posts that you see on social media. If I were to, put it in perspective, I think human resources, the only role that the HR function and the people in HR have is to be in the trenches, to be with the people as they struggle for the organization, be it in marketing, be it in sales, be it in operation, be it in finance, wherever, to be in the trenches, to relate to people, and to carry back the voices from the ground to the leadership, and then craft the policy around that. That, I think, is the key role for HR to perform.
Right.
But instead of that, HR has become they become a sounding board for the top management. Again, that is welcome, but they cannot become a sounding board for the organization, and the views of the leadership is something that I personally think. So if they have to have that neutral ground, if they have to have that high ground, if they have to have that wise mean around them, then that distance is very, very necessary. And it need
Right.
not be that you articulate every time what the top leadership does and justify a firing or justify anything, however it may pan out. That's my personal belief about HR. But let's remember that they're human beings working in an organizational function as well.
Yeah. And I personally, Samant, find HR actually as one of the toughest role in any organization, because there's like there are many scenarios where as an HR you can never win. You can get blowback from the team, you can get blowback from the leadership, and many a times you're just stuck in a very hard place, trying to take those calls. And like you said, HR is full of regular people, right? And having to navigate those tough challenges. And what I have seen is often, at least when I've hired young HR professionals right out of college or with a few years of experience, is that many are taken aback by this reality of the workplace. This is not something that is shared with young aspiring HR professionals in colleges. And I see this big disconnect between what they are taught and the reality of the world that they are entering in. What are your thoughts on that, considering, one of your big interests is also as an educator? How do you see this, and how colleges are shaping the HR professionals of tomorrow?
Yeah, Raghav, it's very ironical that a lot of youngsters who want to enter HR want to be in it because it's a kind of desk job. You know, you don't have to go and sell door to door. You don't have to craft strategies, travel all the time, be in the field, and all that. And that is something which is really wrong with the way HR is perceived, in my view. Or that is wrong with the way HR professionals have maybe portrayed the function to youngsters. You are absolutely right. There is this disconnect, therefore, between what is taught and what is the reality. Many, people want to join it, like I said, because it's a desk job, they'll have a comfortable, cushy job in an organization, in a safe office somewhere. And which is what I say. I think HR is a function which should never have, is one function, including the CHRO, should never have an office anywhere, no office desk. They should be able to take their laptop, sit down wherever they can find some space, because they belong to the entire organization. and they belong to the people in an organization. So there should be no HR space, which if by itself becomes a power center, in an organization. Now, when you say that HR, doesn't seem to win, it's not a matter of winning or losing. It's the character of your function. It's the character of the work that you do. HR is not just a function. It's a calling within the organization, is what I would say. It's a calling. Do you really want to deal with people? Do you really want to take what they throw at you, what the organization throws at you? Are you capable of deep and very strong emotional intelligence? Are you capable of empathy, the key thing, that key quality that an HR professional must possess? Are you capable of doing rigorous and very compassionate communication with people? Because you will be called upon sometime to you know disengage with people, sometimes also to engage people. So those are the things that HR should be able to bring to an organization. And in that, there will be challenges. I won't call them defeats. I won't call them a hard place. I would say that that is just the nature of the job that you are in. If
Right.
if truly people your passion, be prepared for all the troubles, all the stones that come your way, all the brickbats that come your way. The bouquets will happen too, let me tell you, because it's only a matter of time before an organization and its people recognize a HR leader or a functionary who vibes with them,
Mm-hmm.
for the lack of a better word, who
Yeah.
vibes with them, who kind of moves with them, who is a kindred spirit. It's only a matter of time.
Right.
But to get to that space, you have to go through some of the challenges, some of the rough spaces, as you call them, some of the hard spaces, some of the defeats that come your way. And then an HR professional, the leader, should be able to set aside his or her ego and attend to these with a sense of humor, if possible.
Right.
That's my take on the role of HR. And of course, I said they should never have a seat. No organization should tell the CHRO, this is your corner office.
Right.
This is what marks you out to be the CHRO. No, you belong to the people. You are an HR guy. You belong to the people. Go and sit anywhere that people sit and work from there.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it.
Yeah. A couple of questions arise for me from what you shared. I'll ask the first. What you have described is essentially that if you want to join in the HR field, like you better be this kind of person or be ready to become this kind of person, right? Because if you aren't comfortable with doing that, then this field might not be the right one for you, right? And I think that is something which would be so great if it is more openly communicated with youngsters when they are wanting to even explore the HR field. Because what I often find is that a lot of roles and responsibilities are told to them. Oh, when you become HR, you will get involved in talent recruitment, you will get involved in retention planning and strategies. But what is the kind of person you need to become in order to excel in this field or in order to feel like you belong here? I think that is something which isn't highlighted well, and thank you for highlighting that. I really appreciated that. um, so that was less of a question, more of an observation.
No, since
But
you spoke about that, let me tell you something. I got into HR through one of the best organizations that I've worked in, which is the Steel Authority of India Limited. I joined SAIL as a management trainee. I didn't have a management qualification then. Okay. I just cracked the All India competitive exam and I joined the Steel Authority of India. It still remains in my book. I spent about 13 or 14 years in SAIL, it still remains the best place that I have worked in. And then I got picked into, selected into HR because of, their assessment during the training. It's a 1 year training, 1 year training that you go through. You are a management trainee. You're a rookie out there. You are taken through operations, through finance, through public relations, through HR. All kinds of modules are taught, right? And their sale is this great place with many, training institutes, all in
Yeah.
their steel plants and all that. So, and then they discover somebody with the knack for being in HR,
Yeah.
or the knack for being in purchase, or for the knack of being in marketing, you know. So, and then they pick people for that. Not all organizations can afford it.
Yeah.
To have this kind of, lengthy training program. So they rely on a great management school and people who have specialized. And you're absolutely right. They need to be told about the real world of HR, but instead they are taught performance management. These are the models, right? Training and development. These are the models,
Yeah.
right? And then, now all of them are sidetracked into the great idea of HR analytics.
True.
And you keep on analyzing, you have these Excel sheets.
Yeah.
I remember, good HR leader tell me in one of the finest organizations I work for, and say that, I'm most comfortable in front of an Excel sheet with all
Mm.
the data columns, in front of me. So this is what happens. Your orientation becomes very data centric. Your orientation becomes very, automatic kind of, automated,
Yeah.
sort of. So, and then you lose sight of who you actually work for, the people you work for. And yes, it requires a certain bent of mind. It requires a certain culture. It requires a certain character to be in human resources. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's seen more and more these days, right? People are becoming numbers on spreadsheets. And
Absolutely.
you see this with all the news of layoffs, etc., happening in the tens of thousands, despite many companies posting record profits. Like you see, especially in the tech sector, you see it very often. And that's the sad bit, that you can lose sight of the fact that there is a human element in the human resources function.
Yeah, there definitely is. So what happens when, as you said, people might be posting strong profits and then, follow that up with layoffs, with announcement of layoffs? That there are several business models at work, I think. So when people become a part of just a business model that you have, like it happens in the tech sector, if they would like people to come in cheap, and once they acquire a certain kind of certain level of financial uh, you know point in the organization, that's when they think they should be let go because they're no longer cheap.
Yeah.
But that's the business model. I don't want to get into that. It's unfortunate that we have these layoffs, especially with companies that are posting strong profits, but I guess they have the model. uh, what I would like to say is that it it all comes back eventually, right?
Yeah.
Um, I have been in organizations that were really starved for talent, and they would do anything to get talent in. At some point in time, organizations realize that they really don't have the resources, human resources, to drive their profit machine. And that's when I guess, the truth comes home. But I would think that organizations must approach human resources with a lot more clarity of purpose, and a lot more compassion than has happened, because the workforce demographics have changed radically.
Yeah.
You're no longer dealing with boomers and Gen Zs and millennials. You got the alpha ones now taking center stage, and I I would be very unhappy in case that set, the new set that's joining, gets scarred by what they see in the organization. It's a fresh new generation that is raring to go. It has its problems, it has its angularities, of course, but it's raring to go. It wants to contribute, it wants to be creative, it wants to be purposeful. It's a very purpose driven set that we have. I hope that organizations and their policies are crafted in a way that helps to nurture that purpose and that creativity, the new workforce that's coming into play now in our organizations.
Simant,
That's the way I see it.
you have you have a very unique work history in the sense that you have worked in the government sector, you have worked with the private for-profit sector, and you have also worked in the non-profit sector. Right? I have seen very few professionals who have done all three. How do you how do you reflect back? What is the difference in the way, or is there any difference in the way these three different sectors develop their people?
So there are differences. There's little doubt that there are differences, and I have just I have been very fortunate that organizations have seen value in what I have to offer and have taken me, whether it's non-profit or anyone. See what happens in the. So I have worked in the public sector, which is the government control sector. Then I have worked also in the government. Right, bang, when I worked for MyGov for about a year and a
Yeah.
half, it was as the head of HR for MyGov, so which is a government
Yeah.
organization. Then I have worked in the private, great organizations like Wipro and IBM, and then in the non-profit sector with CARE, and now with another non-profit sector organization. So there are crucial differences. The public sector, I thought, was very oriented towards government rules, regulations, and the sharp definitions of ethics as provided by governmental conduct, which is amplified, of course, in any government organization that you go to, like MyGov.
Right.
The private sector, I thought, the my work in Wipro and IBM was a little more experimental, more innovative, and would give you the freedom in case you bring something of value, you bring a program of value, they would give you the freedom to run it. That's how I got to develop Wipro at home, okay, which is the first parental engagement program that rolled out in the IT sector in India. So
Wow.
Wipro at home, we brought parents of employees, young employees, to the campus to see, for themselves where their wards were, and they were so happy about that. And gradually it rolled out. Even last I heard, LinkedIn was doing a LinkedIn at home, as they say, or TCS and others were doing it. Likewise, if I propose a program in IBM, which was the Voice of Employees Clinic, which was an employee connect initiative, IBM, the leadership in IBM lapped it up instantly and they rolled with it. So it gave you a little more freedom. Why little? Quite a lot of freedom to determine what you want to do. And they were also more rigorous in their HR practices. The skip levels, for example, the rigor I saw in the private sector in having those skips was not there elsewhere. The rigor of communicating with people, the intense communication that they wanted with people, is not there elsewhere. What is it then about the non-profit sector, to which you and I have belonged and we have worked together,
Yeah.
and which remains a sector that I consider very close to my heart. Maybe because it's kind of a part of the lineage. My father worked in the non-profit sector as well. So, what is it about the non-profit sector? I think uh, in the non-profit sector where you work for services to the community, HR kind of you know rolls back. That spirit of service rolls back into HR. So. In the non-profit sector, you'll find people say we are a humanitarian organization.
Yeah.
We should deal with people with compassion. Some of the edges around performance could then get blurred,
Right.
right? So the edges around performance, some of the edges around holding people responsible could become blurred as well. And then when that happens, when those edges get blurred, you know, it's comfortable to fit into centers
Yeah.
within the organization and to cultivate certain areas. I am not by any stretch of imagination judging it. It's just the nature of the work we do in the
Yeah.
nonprofit sector and how it rolls back into various streams within organizations. For example, I'll give you another one more example. There would be norms for people to fly from one destination to another, right? And that people at a certain level only could fly.
Mm-hmm.
But it is very easy in the non-profit sector to get a clearance, to get an exception done, and for others also to fly. It
Yeah.
used to happen, quite a lot. That's just because of the nature of the work, nature of the organization that they are in. It keeps happening. It becomes very flexible. So it becomes flexible. The private sector is very innovative. The government sector can be very pro forma about, can be very, very formal about HR. That's the way I see this play out in the HR field.
And have you had to make any mental shifts when you have moved from one context to the other?
Well, the mental shifts would happen in these practices, right? But I have gone into human resources in all organizations with that same focus, that I'm there for the people, right? And if I am not working for the benefit of the people, which is the real benefit that goes to the organization, then I'm not doing my job,
Right.
right? So in that sense, a fundamental in the core of my belief, I have never had to make a shift. And I'm very, very grateful that, my passion for people has translated into some of the business elements that I have done. Okay. Um, working now, I work for a programmatic side of the nonprofit. And again, it is the same people. What difference are we making to people? How are we talking to communities? How are we, ensuring that cities and urban areas become livable habitats
Right.
for people? That's something that we're working on. So
Right.
my work for people, spreads across into programs also, and that's something that I'm grateful for.
Right.
Even when I even my doctoral thesis, when I did my doctorate, I worked on how community engagement, how consultations with communities can shape our development programs, especially with relation to skill development
Yeah.
programs. So I found that they had a major impact in case you talk to people about what kind of development programs will help them. In this case, so when I was dealing with skill development programs, I went to many locations where I found that the skill development that was taking place was what the skill training provider was equipped for,
Yeah.
more than what the participants wanted.
That's often the case with many such programs, right? You
It
you
is,
bring an agenda to the people and
yeah,
say we have arrived and we are here to implement this.
yeah. That's something I thought. for example, there's a place I went to where everybody was learning how to make phenyl making. Droves and droves people are learning phenyl making, and phenyl making is not that big an industry, and so, or it does not have that many um, entrepreneurial opportunities. But more than that, forget that. Do they really want to learn this?
Yeah.
So that's what drove my thesis work. And I found that when I did my study on the field, uh, many of them would say, I would rather not be in this training program. I have been called to this training program. I have to go through this, but I'd rather not be in this training program. And many of those skill development training programs are supposed to benefit metropolitan centers and industries around metropolitan centers. That's what the skill mapping exercise that others had done would say. But then again, if it's a real people centric, human centric skill program, you look at what your people want more than what industry wants, more than what a city wants, something like that. Although I realize, to be practical, that the employment opportunities exist there. But first, what do people want to be trained in should be our chief cause, is my belief. That's how I approach HR.
You know, I'm again, I have to point out, like, when I speak to many professionals of my age, I'm starting to see a lot of cynicism develop in them about their field or whatever, right? How have you managed to not become cynical about people, and you're still managing to retain that enthusiasm over such a long career? How is how have you managed that? Because I can tell you, in today's age, it's quite a superpower.
Touch wood, touch wood. Uh, you know, uh, I also have my own demons. Make no mistake about that. But then I guess, having worked for very long in human resources, I have developed the capability to be aware of my demons. And what happens is, and that is the key role that we have. The emphasis on mental wellness, well-being that is being laid now,
Yeah,
workplace wellness. Why is that happening? Because a lot more people are suffering breakdowns a lot quicker than anticipated.
yeah,
People are suffering breakdowns. People are suffering from mental issues quite, earlier than anticipated. If it had been a little later, maybe they would have developed the capacity or the capability to deal with it. But now they cannot.
right.
So I'm grateful that my HR work has given me the ability to be that way. And also, I have never been wary of speaking out whenever necessary.
Yeah,
Rather than keep it bottled inside. See, somebody defined, I forget the name who, but it's a very famous quote, that cynicism, or cynicism, as you say, is intellectual dandism. Okay, so you be cynical to be really have a differing point of view, and then to be noted by others around you. So but having said that, uh, if you focus on some of the negatives in the organization and in the work that you do, then the cynicism or the negative attitude and the approach comes fairly early and fairly easily. Whereas I would say that people, those who work and those who are in jobs, those who are in jobs heaven, as I say, and it's a
yeah,
very minuscule percentage of professionals in the organization, in the country. Let me tell you, those who are in jobs heaven must really look at what is great in that heaven. The
yeah,
fact that they have work, and however much, 16 hours a day, 14 hours a day, I know the complaints are, but if you have the work, that is your leverage to make the change that you want to do in society. If you
Right.
do not have that work, you will not be able to make an impact. So once you realize this, I guess the cynicism will convert into a lot of optimism, a lot of hope, a lot of light may come from.
Right. And so what you're saying is this is actually a set of mental tools or mental practices that you can develop
Yeah,
to handle these challenges that will come. Because over
absolutely.
your career, you will definitely encounter situations where you will get frustrated at your job. You might even get frustrated at colleagues or what the work that you're doing and things like that. But how to not have that hamper your perspective moving forward is also a skill that you have to develop and grow and nurture, right? Which is what you just pointed out is something that you developed yourself.
Absolutely. You know, there's a book, the Carl Newport book that you recommended, Be So Good That They Can't Ignore You, right? If you're immersed in your work, if you're absorbed in your work, that's 90% of the battle won. That's 90% of the mental tool that you require. You're trying to be good at your work, each day, improving each day. That's the thing. Now, all the other things, all the, conflicts, all the sense of injustice and all that, they pass away. But your mastery of your work remains irrespective of where you are and what you're doing. Your mastery of that work will always remain. So, as I say, if a man knows how to, uh, make a good plowshare, even if that person lives in the middle of the jungle, people will find their way to that
Yeah.
place to, get his plowshares. So, and as a thing as humble as a plowshare. So, your power should be your mastery over the work. That is my take on how you deal with everything in office.
Yeah. And that's a very different piece of advice from what you hear usually. What you're saying is, all of that will happen, but focus on your craft, focus on excelling at that, and that itself will allow you, as you get better at it, it'll also give you the freedom and the choice to also choose the kind of places you work at and the kind of people you work with as well.
All freedom comes from that mastery.
Yeah.
Financial freedom, the freedom to change locations, the freedom to go to different organizations, to go to an organization of your choice, it comes. But people who have mastered their craft usually stay on in just one organization. I have seen that. Masters of the craft are very, very stable.
Yeah.
For them, the outside storm is something that happens to be kind of weathered at
Mhm.
at best. But they are extremely grounded, extremely stable, most often very humble, sometimes not so, but they are extremely stable and extremely grounded. The freedom that they get, they rarely exercise. It's just something good to have.
Yeah.
But even better is that mastery that they have in their craft.
Right. That brings me to one thing which I've observed sometimes, uh, not necessarily any place I've worked at, but generally, is that often when you get really good at a skill, you can fall into the trap of thinking that there you are also, or your views about other domains are equally as great, right? So how do you avoid falling into that trap? Because I've seen that, you see it in the news as well. You see these uh, really smart people talk about domains that are outside of their circle of competence very regularly, and the views that they present don't hold much, like if you test those views, they don't hold much water, I would say, or won't don't hold much weight. So how do
That's one of the pitfalls of the social media age, right? You get a platform to shoot your mouth off or to write something, and everybody thinks they can do it, from space science to the ocean depths to everything. That's just something that happens on social media, I would say. And if somebody who doesn't have the competence to speak about it, it will not be worth reading. You'll come to realize as soon as you read through first 2 3 lines. But like I told you, people with mastery in their subject are usually very humble.
yeah,
They usually recognize that while they know a lot, it's not enough.
right,
And that's what makes him so endearing. That's what makes them so uh, accessible.
yeah,
That's what makes their wisdom so profound for all of us. A few of them, however, can develop an air or an arrogance because of the mastery that they have. Even that is fairly excusable.
yeah,
What is not excusable is the to be social media warriors
right,
and have a view on everything because you're supposed to have a view on everything, or you're asked to have a view on everything. you know the real good ones say, I don't know about this, let me not speak about it, and they do it fairly regularly. But otherwise, what you described right now seems to be extremely symptomatic of the social media age, and you and I are aware of who
yeah.
all keep doing it. It's not to bother too much about it.
And do you think in today's world it's acceptable to say I don't know something?
Oh, more than ever.
Because you're
You
expected
know,
to have an opinion on everything,
no, not really, not really. I mean, don't play to what people expect from you,
right?
right? In terms of these things, opinions and speech and stuff like that. No, if you don't, because it's a world of exploding knowledge, right? Everywhere is filled with packed with such great nuggets of knowledge. While I talked about social media in a slightly negative sense in the previous answer, the fact is social media is packed with great nuggets of knowledge. Be careful, however, to distinguish it from AI generated fakeism. That's which is also very current now.
Yeah,
Uh, so it's packed with knowledge, and the more you read social media and the more you discover different facets of knowledge, the more you realize that I could be learning more on this. So it's okay to say I don't know. It's
yeah,
perfectly fine, and nobody loses respect or value because they say I don't know this. In fact, if anything, they should be appreciated for their honesty in saying that I don't know.
yeah. Simant, my last question to you is that nowadays I see on LinkedIn a lot of posts bashing Gen Z, you know.
Gen Z.
Yeah, Gen
Oh, poor
Z,
things. What have they
Gen
done?
Z, and not Gen X, Gen Z.
Yeah, I understand.
Um, bashing Gen Z, oh, they don't know how to work, oh, they don't want to work as hard, they don't want to work 100 hours and whatever. I'll ask you a different question. What is something that you have seen in Gen Z that really inspires you?
So let me get back to the fundamentals. Gen Z is the population that
After
follows
millennials.
after millennials, right? So millennials would have
So
ended around 89,
Gen Z is after 1997, I think. Born after
1997.
97.
So yeah, this lot. Oh my God, why? Yeah. Okay, I have read those as well. That they have short attention spans. That they do not, they come from wealthy backgrounds, so they really do not value money. They are a second generation this thing. Um, and they do not stick around in jobs
Yeah.
long enough, deep enough, and all that. I think that's very unfortunate, Raghav, in my view. The I have I have worked with a cross section of ages, right?
Yeah.
And I have never typified them into generations as such, right? So I'm working with what some alphas also even now at the come in as interns. I mean, with Gen Z, with people from Gen Z, what I have always felt is the huge energy they bring into the room.
Yeah.
You know, they bring that energy, they bring that drive. It's just the way you harness it,
Yeah.
right? Just the way you harness it. And yes, you need to harness it with that. That generation really brought to the fore, and the millennials before that, they brought to the fore the idea of transparency.
Yes.
They brought to the fore, they demanded that organizations be transparent in what they do. You could be doing wrong, be transparent about it, be open about it, be courageous about it, right? Maybe it comes from the fact that most of them came from privileged backgrounds. That's a setback. You can't hold them responsible for that.
Mm-hmm.
But they demanded it, and they have brought that change into organizations, if I may say so. So, many corporate leaders have adapted themselves to Gen Z lifestyle, especially in the IT sector. What are the rewards they want? They didn't want a pizza party or something like that. Gen Z was more satisfied with the latest gadget or the latest software.
Yeah.
That's the generation that brought that into fore. Gen Z had a lot more humanitarian element built into their entire mental landscape because they came from privileged backgrounds. They knew what the rich poor divide was.
Yeah.
They could empathize with that, and they brought that into being. And so they were against injustice. So I I don't see any reason. It's you can bash every generation, by the way.
Yeah.
If you want to pick a fault, you can bash every generation. The
Yeah.
Gen X, the Boomer generation, why? They're responsible for so many wars. They are responsible for all so many ego battles. The greatest egos came from those generations after all. So why don't you talk about that? It's just because they are young and you can pick on them, maybe some people do. I would
Yeah.
not. I don't look at the negatives so much as the potential to harness in the generations that we have. In the new generation, the alpha generation, oh my God, the creativity, the
Yeah.
curiosity, the ability to challenge you, the ability to question you. It's worth a gold mine in itself, and organizations need to capture that in case they want to grow further.
Yeah.
That's my belief.
That's been one of my main observations as well. They are unafraid to question the status quo. Like, why is this way? Why are we still doing things in such a manner? I think that brings a fresh perspective to the workplace, and organization
Absolutely.
which embrace that will be just far more nimble and agile to adapt to today's scenarios. Because now these are this Gen Z and the Alpha generation, they are going very soon going to be the largest one, anyways, in the workplace and in the markets, the paying ones. So I think companies that embrace what perspectives they bring will be well poised.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they would need the earlier generations, the Gen Xers, the millennials, and others to really handhold them through
Yeah.
this transition. And the world is in transition, right?
Yes.
It'll go even it'll the transition will speed up. That's when you need to really take the Gen Z and the Alpha through the transition properly because they are they are the ones who are going to rule the future in any case. If you don't transition properly with them, then it's not going to work out very well. That's my belief.
Yeah. Uh, Before we end, Simant, what makes you happy these days?
What makes me happy? I think my, you know, I I read. That makes me happy. I stay with my family. That makes me happy. And boy, am I happy I am not in that Coldplay video.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Suman. Thank
Right.
you.
Thank
I hope
you.
you enjoyed the interview.
I loved it. I loved it, Raghav. And thank you so much, for making this as pleasurable as you could.